How are you, my friend?
Wow.
I'm coming along pretty good, thank you.
So I was
This guy killed me.
So
Yeah, 'cause
I was
you
looking
don't
at
unless you do blood work.
7,000 is
Man,
frontage, and then 6,000 is.
Right. Yeah. Right.
Huge influx the last project, you know, it's turned into probably a little less than.
Yeah.
So your assumption is it's just the project is
She does report writing, so she coordinates
slow.
all the study information and
Yeah, I
then
mean,
preps
we
it to
could-
go up to the next.
I think it's,
Out to like a third party.
whatever policies, whatever.
First, they took all the file folders and then it's gonna stuff, oh, no.
Yeah, all the requirements are in there. The studies are even now, they're supposed to still, you know, it's surprised that I'm touching tell shots, like, they didn't do the study. You know, they're supposed to check it at 50, check it at 5, whatever. Like, the little details that like can change a thing.
from the same thing for the communities that have mandatory connection. Most of it.
It's, yeah, it's an option, the trips to the arts, faster their kids too.
So it's absolutely no, so, yeah.
I swear,
I don't know.
I can't for the guys.
Other content.
Here, don't worry.
Yeah, like 10 years, because they put kids away. The cost, the term needs to be longer.
There's construction everywhere, isn't there?
Oh my God, yes.
It's a township, you have to do the assessment.
Just a longer term.
Right, which you could do that. See, is there a 10-year assessment or something? Yeah, I'm sure we could do. It's not great, it's not so big.
Yeah, I think they probably had charters and assessment.
Yeah. The only challenge is if we do a 10-year, someone walks away and they sell the house. We don't have to,
Flash if
we'd have to have lien.
They started during COVID.
Okay.
They still run it, they still get things going out their way.
Yeah.
That's still like every. Still get the reminders every, like Sunday nights.
So contract, yeah.
Last year.
It's a job to keep on subscribing.
Personal time, I just say, hey.
This guy, cool. No, it was money.
That's the fun part of work.
Kind of
I need
related.
to see you after the meeting for just 2 seconds.
Good, my brain's full.
Okay, thank you. Okay. Good morning, it's 8:30, let's call the Kalamazoo Water System Utility Policy Committee meeting to order for September 12th, 2024. Any changes or additions to the agenda? The only change I noticed that the utility financial policy, I think, is actually an action that we're requested to amend that policy for the revision that was sent to us. Any other motion?
I'll make the motion to accept the agenda as presented with the one noted change for an action item.
There's a motion by Crum and a second by Wheat to approve the agenda as presented with the one change. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries, all ayes. Introductions, guests? We could go around the room.
Tim Hudson with the Regional Commission.
Mark Elliott.
Jeff Sorensen, Cooper Township and Regional Commission.
Lisanne Harma, Richland Township Regional Commission.
Rick Fryman, Portage Planning Commission.
Christina Hutchings, Ross Township.
Derek Knopf, Consumers Energy. Jerry Vanders, Charleston Water Sewer.
Thank you. I guess we should go around the table here since some of them don't know us.
Steve Asenzi, I'm the first city alternate.
Jeff Chamberlain with the City of Kalamazoo.
Libby Heine Cogswell with the Regional Water and Wastewater Commission.
Tom Wheat, Briner Newhoff.
James Baker, City Kalamazoo, I'm a staff member, I'm not a board member.
John Crum, Gull Lake Sewer and Water Authority.
David Anderson, City of Kalamazoo.
Peter Hefner, board member with the Hefner Group.
Thank you. Item 4 is acceptance of the August 8th, 2024 draft minutes.
I would make a motion that we approve the minutes. I'll support that.
Motion by Peter Hafner, second by John Crum to approve the minutes as presented. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries all ayes. Any public comment this morning? Anyone wishing to speak to the board at this time? Hearing none, we'll continue with item 6, unfinished business. And we have item A, the Consumers Energy Renewable Program. This was on the agenda in August, and we had lengthy discussion and then determined to continue the discussion at this meeting, consideration of the item. And we did obtain there was a request to obtain some information from the Regional Water and Wastewater Commission members, and so we have that, and there's a hard copy today on the table, and as we enter the room on that table as well. And there was a question also about what the impact of the rates could be in this program, and there's also information provided today as a hard copy handout.
Also, I had an opportunity to meet with James Baker and Consumers Energy representative and a representative from Michigan Public Power Association. And we kind of talked through the program and the other alternatives, and kind of just got a better understanding. I personally don't feel like I'm an expert in the risk-reward side of this, because there's a potential for savings and there's a potential for paying more. And I'm not really a gambler, so I don't go out there. But so I gained some more information. It was very informative, and overall, my thought would be that Regional Commission is positive towards renewable energy and generally supportive of it. And there's alternative approaches to getting that renewable energy. So I personally would like to propose that we would be in support of renewable energy and defer to the city if this is the right approach to obtaining that renewable energy. I just don't know enough about it to suggest, okay, you guys take on this approach. So that's me personally. I would propose that we would have a motion to support renewable energy being obtained by the city and defer to them the risk reward if this is the appropriate approach.
So
Is that your motion?
Yeah.
Is that a motion? Okay. Is there a second?
I'll support that.
Okay. Now
And can we have
discussion,
further
yes,
discussion?
yes.
So this issue did go to the Regional Commission last week, right?
Yes.
And we did discuss it. And there is, as Peter said, there was general support for it. The Regional Commission did not want to recommend it to the city commission, just because, for the same reasons that Peter just indicated. But coming out of the meeting, there was general consensus, and I wrote down what we thought we could bring back here, and again, it falls in line with just Peter said, and there was a general consensus at regional commission for this. It was generally in support of the renewables and the program, but we'll defer to the city's decision in making that decision. Especially since there's a lot more. It's a small chunk of the whole. It's not a small part, but it's not the entire. Because the city apparently is you're doing everything, right?
Correct. The program would include general fund assets, water and wastewater assets. If we looked at water and wastewater together, it would represent 88% of this program.
Okay.
And just one point of clarification, that the regional commission input was sought in order to bring back to this meeting, yeah. And then this is, in terms of process, it's this group that then is invited to the city.
Can we, in further discussion, can we understand what this, I just picked this up, is there? Anybody had a chance to look at it?
I can talk through it if
Sure.
the board
Yes.
would like. So where we left off during our last meeting, we really talked about, there's, the kind of three buckets that we're moving towards or that are influencing, our decisions. One of them is the program in itself, and our sustainability goals. So, to kind of fast forward through some decision-making at the city, we've got a community sustainability plan. That sustainability plan creates a framework for us to implement these goals. One of the items for implementation is to accelerate local renewable energy investments. That's within our plan, and we've kind of outlined ways that we're doing that. This is a big component of that plan. When we look at our overall greenhouse gas emissions across the entire city, we see that it's heavily, between two sources, natural gas and electricity. If we look at the electricity, that's, we're able to solve it with this program. This program overall would solve 43% of all greenhouse gas emissions from the city. So if we go back to that sustainability plan, that goal is to reduce greenhouse gases. And we saw from city operations that pie chart of, how big that is. This program would eliminate 43% of our greenhouse gas emissions. Of that, those greenhouse gas emissions, a lot of it is from the water and wastewater utility. 88% is from the water and wastewater utility. We looked at, providing our own solar. If we took a landfill or a large area of the city that has acreage, we've got 2 landfills. The biggest is about 60 acres. That would not be enough. We would need, several hundred acres to be able to do that. We looked at well fields, and that doesn't align with what we're trying to do at well fields. We have a forest to faucets program at our well fields, and so we're managing forest out at those big areas like El Sabo and Fred McClendon Trails and Comstock. We have a different management plan for those areas, and we would not support deforestation, for that. We also talk about the program itself. Consumers Energy is here and on the phone to kind of go into the program details of how this works. We talked a lot about, the program itself. We're going to enter in through an agreement for, some 43 million kilowatt hours annually. That program is really based on you only pay for what you use. So if we use less than that subscription amount, we're still only pay for what we use. We sign up with this deadline of September of 2024 for the program to actually take place in 28. Now I'm gonna start talking about the risk, and this is kind of where we're all, coming together. This is where the rubber meets the road, so to speak, of this is a goal for the city. This is a goal for our community. This is a goal for the city commission to reduce greenhouse gases. We talked about different alternatives for us to do that. We feel this is the best way to get there. And this really starts talking about that risk aspect of it. The blue line that you see on the screen, that line represents the cost that we would pay. That's the 6.4 cents per kilowatt hour. The green line is a projection of where we feel that the market could go. You see that the market could be below or above that blue line. When the market is above the blue line, when the green line is above the blue line, we would actually get rebates and credits back. So not only would we get the green energy and the carbon emissions, we would eliminate the carbon emissions, the greenhouse gas emissions would be eliminated. That's a very positive thing for the city that does have value. But then we would also get credits back in system and energy capacity credits. These numbers are very variable based on an annual growth rate of about between 2 and 2.5%. We could have a present value of about $6 million. So that would be a conservative estimate of how much the program could save us from a present value perspective. From a risk and cost standpoint, the program could cost us that the maximum amount this program could cost us is capped. It can't cost more than the $980,000 a year that we identified. So it does cap the risk. And again, looking at the benefits versus, what the risks are, from a financial standpoint, there's only one risk, it's that market risk. The worst scenario is that we pay the $980,000 a year. The benefits are, in our opinion, far outweigh the risk. We're able to mitigate our greenhouse gases. We're able to eliminate 43% of the city's overall greenhouse gas footprint with this one program. In terms of what that looks like, these are the risks as we lay them out. That's the capped amount. The credits and rebates would reduce that. Overall, this is it meets our goals and it aligns with everything in what we're doing. Fast forwarding to that sheet that you have in front of you, broken out, there's a few views of the FAMS model. That's a financial asset management system that Stantec has put together. And what that's showing you is that if we do have to pay the full cost of the program, that $980,000 in 2028, what would that look like from a rate impact? And so if we allowed that rate to kind of flow and we held our coverage ratio solid, it would take about a 2% rate increase to cover that $980,000. So in order to translate, what is $980,000 in risk? That's about a 2% risk to rate. So that would mean if that program did cost us $980,000 in any one year, that would be about a 2% rate increase in that year. The reality of how that, go ahead.
And so if that was to occur, and let's say you had to pay the 6 cents or what have you extra, it would be 2%, and then in the future, it would stay at 2% if you got nothing in return. So that's the risk side.
Right.
And the
right.
reward is you could reduce your rate as well.
Right, yeah, that is correct.
Right, so it's not like you would get hit again and again and again with a 2%,
So
but
it's a 1 year, 2%. It
if
just clicks up and
you,
then-
basically, if you got none, I don't know about the 2% number. I was looking at the audit from 2022, and it was 3%, but the rates have or
Yeah.
before we would even be in the program in 2028, the rates were already going up. And so it likely 2% or 2 point something is
Correct.
probably correct. So
So it's a one-time 2%
if
increase.
you receive nothing in return,
Yeah.
and I don't think that's likely.
Yeah.
But,
So that's the worst case.
right.
It's the worst case scenario.
Yeah.
It couldn't be
The
any
best
worse than
case
that.
is you save.
The best
Actually-
case is we
you
bring
actually
money in
save,
and we
yeah.
offset revenue requirements.
and so that's the plus minus kind of thing.
Okay.
When we were on the call or on the Zoom, so we're saying we're gonna buy this at 6 cents per kilowatt hour. When we were on the call, my person actually looked live online, it was trading at 2 point something cents. So, where is it going? I don't know. That's why I would defer to folks that have studied it in more detail, if that's the right approach. But the risk is 2%.
On the rates.
Right, but it could be a reward
Yeah.
equivalent, so right.
Well, okay, so we were just saying 2%, but then I thought I heard you just say 3%.
Well, I was looking at 2022. The program doesn't start until 2028. And 2023, we already increased the rate, so likely 2%
Okay.
at that point in time is accurate. But I didn't try to do that. I didn't even know what this thing is, she provided.
Yeah, it's a FAMS model, and then as the water system grows, that $980,000 is fixed, and so that relative rate impact becomes less
Yeah.
in time. So we already project the water rate increases annually of around 6 to 7% based on what we know today. So that's gonna create kind of a natural growth curve in the water fund. The $980,000 is a fixed amount, and that would reduce that risk over time.
Yes.
Just a couple of things, the city of Kalamazoo embarked on a sustainability plan a few years ago. And so, obviously a big focus of that was looking at the city of Kalamazoo. But as we looked at those types of topics, we really had to recognize amongst ourselves and the city commission and the public that there are things that the city of Kalamazoo can control, i.e. our own electric bills for a public safety station or something like that, versus what, the community at large can do, So we recognize that there are not things that, the city can't do things like with your personal household to do energy efficiency, but we can encourage things. So that's why we're partnering with consumers and our neighborhood associations and other things on how to help people get their homes more energy efficient so they can do it on a household basis and save themselves some money. So then when we looked at what can be done at an organizational level, at the government level, if you would, then, it was, we could change some LED light bulbs, things like that. We could try to get some more storm windows for some of our buildings to make them more cost-effective in the wintertime and heating and cooling. But really, we kept coming back to our biggest drivers, though, were really our energy costs. And as James had here on the slide, water and wastewater are by far the biggest. And wastewater is the biggest of that. And that, puts the group into a whole interesting conversation in that this is really a regional energy cost. But yet, the city of Kalamazoo gets literally the bill. And I think we have 200 some accounts.
Yeah, we're looking at
that we have.
197 accounts to enroll in
Consumers.
this program.
Yeah, everything from the farmer's market to City Hall to a public safety station to the wastewater treatment plant to a well field that's out in one of the townships. They're all metered individually. So when this project or this opportunity came along, we looked at it really carefully in that, we're not talking about just risks for the city of Kalamazoo ratepayers, we're talking about risks regionally and what that could mean. And we had to take a long, hard look at that. So that's why we looked at, the state of Michigan has signed on to this. Michigan State University has signed on to this. Believe Grand Rapids is looking into this right now. Not sure if they're
General Motors, Walmart.
General Motors, Walmart. So then we asked another question too of, the subscription rate that the city would be entering into as far as the contract. Did like the state of Michigan get a much better deal than the city of Kalamazoo would get, for example? And it turns out, no, it's all the same. So we're paying the same subscription rate that state of Michigan is, Michigan State University is, General Motors.
Yeah,
So
whoever
that-
enters into the program for 2028 is the same.
Yeah, so that again, that felt like that reduced the risk somewhat too. That, we're not a small player in this and we're being charged a higher rate. No, we're being charged the same rate as everybody else. So when we got done with all that analysis, this seems like a way that has an acceptable level of risk, but at the same time can have positive benefits that we've been trying to accomplish. And then, as James mentioned at the very beginning, there's just not enough acreage anywhere for us to do a solar field that could do anything like this, to have a true impact on our energy renewable goals for like water and wastewater. And so this seemed like a partnership that could check enough boxes, but wanted to be honest though and forthright with the potentials and the risks. So just in reading through the materials, I very much appreciated that the regional commission talked about this, and understand that, not everybody's gonna have the same viewpoint on everything, but I think that was very helpful to get those thoughts and sent out ahead of time to us too. Thank you.
So I had a question looking at the comments, which is the comment related to no tolerance for rate increases, which is somewhat a separate conversation because we already have rate increases that we're talking about ongoing. And so I just wanted, I guess, reflective of that, someone could turn around and interpret a rate increase for 2025 as somehow related to this, if they just wanted to throw things together and think of it that way, so.
Right. Not until 2028 would it have any impact.
Yes, but I'm saying it just could, the
And we-
facts
we-
don't necessarily matter.
We can monitor it. You're gonna see it on the bill. It'll show you what did you have to pay extra and what is your rebate.
Yeah.
And so over time, we could even monitor it and, then you can make a better determine, if this is only for 20 years, then you're out. But at some point you might say, hey, we need to take another approach. Maybe solar's more efficient than, or what have you.
I think my understanding is that there could be communication, either when the city commission considers this or whatever, that there would be zero rate impact until 2028. This would not affect the rates, just so that word,
That's
just so that
correct, yeah.
word is out there.
And at that point, we could monitor, let's say once a year, how did it perform? Because you're gonna have a year where it's higher perhaps, and years where you're saving, or you might be saving right off the bat. It just, I don't know what that market will do, and they're gonna add theoretically like 30% more renewables within like 5 to 10 years, so.
Maybe between now and 28, you also monitor annually what the rates are, so you have a feel where it's going.
Yeah, but it's not a huge percent regardless, and it could be a 2% savings. I don't know enough about it personally.
Is there intended to be for consumers communication on this in 2028? Say, hey, partner, you're saving, or you're not saving.
It'll be right on the bill.
Okay.
It's gonna say, here's what you paid extra, is my understanding, and then it'll say, here's what credits you received.
Good. Because in 2028, we're all gonna forget this conversation, and we're just gonna be moving along. So it'd be nice in 2028, 2029,
If it says,
somehow
hey,
the
we
report
ended up
comes back,
saving
yeah.
this year, and it was a good decision.
Yeah.
Or it cost us 0.25%, and the next year we saved 1%, I don't know enough about that side of it.
But even if there is a downside, it's furthering the goals of sustainability, so there's.
Right, that's a huge achievement, really. And if my understanding, and correct me if I'm wrong, is like there'll be a project and you'll actually be kind of the owner of, through the contract of this project, and others are gonna be participating in it. And so that's the point at which you know what the cost of that project was and what you're trying to recapture.
And I should clarify, there was no vote on these at the regional commission, it was people providing the input. So, for example, on the rate increases, certainly nobody likes to see rate increases, but that was not voted, but there were a couple of members that expressed concern for what's happened to rates and not wanting to see any difference going forward, so.
But the consensus coming out of the meeting was right in
Yes,
line with
yes,
the
what-
motion that's
yeah.
on the table.
Yes. So. Any other discussion? There is a motion and a second on the. Ready for vote?
Sure.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries all ayes. The next item is item 6B, the 2025 water rates, and Stan Tech is present as well to talk with us about the rate scenario and the studies thus far. Do you want to introduce that, James, or?
Yeah, I think, just to say, we've been working with Peter and Stantec together to kind of build that FAMS model with all the information from budget, from the capital program. Capital is a big part of rates. I know capital is a separate discussion. Some of that will probably get talked about a little bit within rates. Just to kind of set the stage, a lot of times with rates, our coverage ratio is our North Star. That's what we're working towards. And that aligns with the utility financial plan that the UPC has established. So there's, in any given year, operations and maintenance cost can be variable. They can change from where we thought they were gonna go. Some other things that can happen in terms of projected revenues, we might not sell as much water as we had planned to. So all these individual things that could go up or down all kind of coalesce together, and they either have positive or negative impacts on what we guide towards, our coverage ratio. And so rate making, as much as it is an exercise of just aligning line item budgets, there's also that aspect of making sure that we're hitting our coverage ratio. And so ultimately, that's the most important thing that has to happen. So you might have budget years that are up or down, and that coverage ratio can absorb some of that swing. You might have some erosion over time, which then has to get caught back up.
And I would just point out that coverage ratio is related to the revenue bonds that finance the system.
Yeah.
And I was participating in a meeting with James and some of the city staff as well as Stantec, and we walked through the various components of the model that they utilize for calculation of rates. And there are a few components that need to be updated. So those things relate to like some of the budget items. There was a couple questions about a couple things. James was following up on that. And I can't recall. I think each tab had 3-4 items that needed to be updated. And we discussed that component being updated. I think you need to provide an updated budget for a couple of line items or what have you.
Yeah, we'll provide updated 25 budget, then we've got some personnel costs. One of the things that's gonna be in the rate projection, we're requesting 2 positions to fulfill meter reading role. So those 2 positions will kind of round out our overall team to enable us to now read meters completely in-house. And then that will eliminate a external contract that we had with a meter reading company. So that are some of those changes that are gonna be presented, within that rate analysis.
And then upon your departure from the meeting, we discussed Stantec providing a draft of the rate calculations for the 24th.
Okay.
And then perhaps you and me walk through it, or however we wanna do it
Yeah,
individually, but I've asked for basically all the components of the model. And they'll only provide it in a PDF version to just look through and see if there's anything that looks out of line or what have you. And then the thought was to ask the board, do we want to have a meeting before when it needs to be approved? So our next meeting, we need to approve the rates. So the city can work through that process. There's a timeline in your packet from Mr. Baker that identifies, what has to happen when. And so, or do you want us just to bring you the calculation at the next meeting, knowing that you need to approve it, or, something will need to occur?
There could be, if another meeting is needed, it could be either before that October 10th meeting or a couple weeks after that October 10th meeting and still make it
Yes,
the city
agreed.
deadline.
So specifically, we went through and put down, we need this before the next meeting, this information. We can't get it the week of, we gotta get it some time to look at it. So we should be getting it on the 24th. I mean, at that point in time, I could communicate with you, Libby, and say, things are give us a couple days or what have you, and the rates are gonna look like they're gonna be X, Y, Z. And if,
I think in general, it's good to have two meetings when there's something that's complicated to kind of look at and then process and then vote the next meeting.
so we should have it on the 24th. And we can probably look at it that week, James, does that make sense?
yeah.
And it's pretty complex, and there may be some need for adjustments, just because we have a whole new utility financial policy as well. I want to make sure that that's been included in this and appropriately calculated. So it'll take a little time to look at it. But I like your idea, Libby. I wasn't thinking that, hey, we could get a meeting after our next meeting, should we need to. Or so, for example, let's say it comes back at XYZ rate, is it time to think about doing capital a little differently? Because that's a driver of what happens with the rates. Or, so what's what's the tolerance for rates theoretically? So I'm just throwing it out.
What if we would put a special meeting on our calendars for October 17th or 24th, and then if we don't need it, cancel it?
James, Mr. Mayor, what's the date that you need to know that information? I don't know that I have that.
Goes to the city commission on November 18th.
Okay, so we have October.
Yep.
So I just wanted to throw it out there, that's a,
But they also the city needs time to get the packet information.
yeah.
I mean, for the commission meetings, first reading of the rates, so it would be water and wastewater. And we always do two meetings because it is an ordinance. It would be first reading on November 18th, so technically the packet goes out to the public on November 14th.
Okay.
So as long as we've got everything together and put together, we go out on the 14th is when it goes public.
So I just wanted to try to expedite it and give people time to look at it and kind of digest it, and it's a substantial part of what we're doing here. So that's what I know, or how I've participated so far.
We do have Stantec available to walk us through a presentation if we'd
I
like to
don't
do
know that they wanted to, just because of those variables that
Okay.
are open. I mean, they can if they want, but looking at the actual number, I don't know that they want to disclose that until you got all the numbers are accurate within the model.
Sure, that's fair.
But if they do want to do something else, that's,
I think,
is that fair, Danica?
Yes, can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I agree with that, Peter. We weren't intending on going through any results yet until we refine things a little further with some of the data that we're going to receive here in the next week or so. So once we get that data rolled in, we'll meet with the city and Peter and get some more refined results, and then we can present on those from there.
Yeah, I think the plan was we would get it on the 24th and then we would have some time to consider it and then get back together with the folks at Stantec.
Correct. Yep.
That might have been the following week, but.
So do we want to schedule a special meeting for October 17th or the 24th? And if we need it, we'll keep it, and if not, we'll cancel it?
Sure.
Is that-
So our next meeting is on the 10th?
Yes.
24th.
Just in case extra meeting.
Yes.
Yes.
Do you want to, should we put something on the calendar so it doesn't get filled up? And
Yes.
just, then you can always
Yeah,
cancel it.
yeah.
I'm open both of those days.
Okay, so the 24th is what I heard. We'll check and see if this room is available and, okay. Thank you. Oh, on that item, Peter, you've asked at our meetings, I think you're looking for a formal vote for your participation on that committee? Is that
I don't know that I needed one. I think at one point I thought I should have the folks say participate, but I believe they communicated that to me, so I'm,
It came up during member comments, so it wasn't an agenda item. And we quickly, at that meeting, we reached consensus.
yeah.
So
So,
I
I
mean,
mean, if you're,
I think we could take a vote just to
okay,
clarify that.
that's
right?
fine. I didn't want to do anything until at least the folks said, yeah, do it. So,
I know, I appreciate that you want clear authorization. That's good. Is there a motion?
I'll make a motion to give Peter clear authorization to continue working on the rates with Stantec and the city council.
I'll support.
There's a motion and by Tom Wheat and support by John Crum to authorize Peter to work with Stantec and the city on the rate development process. Any discussion, further discussion? All those in
oh, you're
favor?
welcome.
I,
Opposed? Motion carries. Capital improvements, we have the fiscal year 2025 five-year water CIP. And today and that CIP plan is in the packet. And this is part of that annual process to develop the rates so that there's an understanding of what the capital is factoring into that. James, any introduction before we get into discussion?
Sure, I've got it pulled up on the screen. It is part of everybody's packet. And just to kind of go through the concept, we have a asset management plan that provides overall need, inputs into a capital plan that's, developed over a 10 to 20-year period. We also have certain required inputs such as the reliability study and then, township and city master planning that help us guide where projects are needed and where projects will align. We also then take that information and create kind of a, 1 to 5 year plan that then is submitted to the city budget team and becomes then part of our budget, which becomes part of rates. The capital plan that you have in front of you, our engineers have worked with the Road Commission of Kalamazoo County. We've worked with MDOT and we've worked with Consumers Gas in an effort to align these projects. We're really embracing an asset management plan approach to project delivery and scheduling, which focuses a concept of, a one dig for roadways, and you don't wanna dig up a roadway more than once. This methodology was awarded. I'd like to highlight Kalamazoo Township and Priny Newhoff in their award for the Lake Street project. That was a very complex project coordinated with several different utilities and many participating agencies. City of Kalamazoo was one of those agencies that we participated for the replacement of the water main. That example, that award-winning project is an example of really setting the example, digging the roadway up once and minimizing the impact to the public. So the goal now with new utilities under that roadway is that roadway shouldn't be closed and have to, get dug back up. All of our projects in Kalamazoo, which is a lot of the construction frustration that folks are dealing with right now, are executed in the same way, in that we're completely reconstructing White's and Westnedge and Michical and soon Kalamazoo Avenue. Park Street is, one of those, where we're actually digging all the way down, replacing the water main, making improvements, system improvements, transmission main improvements, for the next 100 years. And then as we come out, there's a new roadway that gets, paid for by cooperation amongst all the participating utilities. The CIP plan's broken out into different areas. We start off with our 01 projects and our 02 projects. Those are water source and pumping, so these are the stations and the towers, and it's everything that goes into the stations. I'm not gonna go through and, read all the stuff that's in there. Overall, the focus of the water source and pumping projects are to increase the reliability and performance of the stations, and also address any treatment needs that are either required by the state or required by level of service. Jumping down through the project list, you can see how projects are funded. There's a column for funding source. It's either bond or DWSRF. It will describe what that is. And then as you go out, if there's $1 in a year, that's the proposed year for that project to either start or is funded. Some of them are funded through multiple years. The 05 projects, the WAT 05 projects, those are projects which are water main. That's either replacement water main or that's water main transmission loops. And we've got specific projects called out. And then we also have what we call as bucket programs. So we have bucket programs for community water main program, water main replacement program. We also have water main lining program and water transmission main program. So these are programs in out years, but there's specific projects called out in new years. We also have a whole column for a whole area for lead services that shows you where we're doing lead services and where we're moving next, for lead services. There is, zooming out, there's a couple highlighted projects. Those highlighted projects are our DWSRF projects that, we just submitted for FY25. That in total are $110 million worth of projects, and we just got some information back on that late last night. Zooming in all the way to the bottom, this is where we're kind of summarizing everything all together. We've got all the different sources listed out. So we've got revenue bonds, DWSRF projects, CIA, which is contribution and aid, and then water operating revenue. So if you look at that first column where there's numbers, that's 2024. The next column over is 2025. So we kind of show you where we're at in current year, and then we start the next year over. Just kind of walking through those, you see that first line item, that revenue bonds, that averages about $30 million a year. Of that $30 million a year of projects, we seek to fund 70 to 80% of those projects. There are projects that are just not gonna start in the year that they were assigned. Some projects might get delayed due to a number of contributing factors. Could be permits, could be land acquisition, could be easements, could be coordinating with those agencies I talked about. We might have a project where we're ready to go in a certain year and it's funded in that year, but MDOT or the road commission isn't ready to go, so that project won't start yet. We don't pick them out. per se. The system kind of balances out overall. You can look at our 5-year average of execution, and it ranges in that 70 to 80%. So if we look at that 30 million average, we're gonna bond sale around 24 million to meet that need. So we're not basing rates on every single project, we base rates on about 70% of the projects. We don't call them out, they're gonna sort themselves out, and so we just fund them with what's available. Dropping down the list, you see DWSRF. DWSRF is kind of a different animal. It is not apples to apples to conventional bonds. There's different interest rates. The payment terms come in different ways. With DWSRF, we don't pay till we complete the project. So in a project that takes 3 years to complete, open market bonds, we pay as soon as we get that money. DWSRF, we pay when the project's done. That has a softer landing for rate impacts. The DWSRF are also heavily subsidized with grants, principal forgiveness, different methods, but overall they lower the rate impact to it. Broadly speaking, we won't do a DWSRF, well, we can't do a DWSRF project if we're not awarded it. So if we're not funded through DWSRF, the project will just disappear. We'll reapply for it in a future year, but if we don't get it, we're not gonna bond for a DWSRF project with open market bonds. So they're separate. Moving down, CIA, that is cash in, cash out, that is a direct payment. That is, a lot of times that's development that's happening out in the townships. New main is going in the ground, it's paid for by a developer. It's also, where we keep all of our service lines, so $6,000 for a new service. A customer pays $6,000, they get a new service, we capitalize that new service, that's all CIA projects. So CIA is funded by the benefit of, who?
The developer.
The developer, yeah, the developer.
Can you also tell us about the RAISE financing projects?
Yeah, RAISE is that is a federal highway program. That is something that the city was applied for and received very competitively. And so those projects are for, Kalamazoo Ave, Michigan Ave, Michigan, downtown streets, converting those downtown streets from one-way to two-way. And so those also include some water main replacement. Some of those costs for that water main replacement was determined to be participating, so Federal Highway has agreed to pay for some of that. And when you see the raise of funding, that indicates that Federal Highway is paying for some of those costs.
So in the rate model, and so I learned some things about this when we were working through the rate model. The RAISE and the DWSRF, and I think maybe DWRF, I guess that's zero for those years. Those are not actually included in a rate calculation because they're basically a grant.
Correct.
So those projects, no grant, no project. Does that make sense or help at all?
Right.
So that's for
yeah,
2025, that's the biggest component.
That's the biggest component. They would be added in, so some of those would have like a principal forgiveness amount, and then they'd have a different term for repayment. So when we actually figure out what that is, then
Does it make sense to do the
right,
project?
yeah, that would get committed that way. With what you see in 24, I believe that entire amount was the grant amount, although there might have been, I don't know, Steve, do you recall in the 24 if that entire amount was the grant amount or there was?
No, I believe about half of that was.
Oh, half of that was the
Yeah.
grant, okay, yeah.
So the bonded component, is that in the 30 million at the bottom or is it in the above? Because that's not in the raise.
So
That's what I'm saying?
yeah, we'll have to clarify with Stantec specifically
Yeah.
on like each one of these. So
I mean,
we're
they're
projecting out, it's not
They're
the
so
rate.
speculative that
Right,
it probably
yeah.
doesn't make sense to do much more than a year or two. But
No, it doesn't until we get project award,
right.
then
But
we go
for
instead
the
of-
ones we do
right.
know, we should get that address, I think, for the current rates,
Correct, yeah,
if you can.
yeah.
Thank you.
I just highlight, it's a separate, we can't just add it to the top bond amount, cause that top bond amount is
No, I
usually
get
at
it.
like a 4%.
But if you
Yeah.
were awarded 50% forgiveness, then we ought to get the other
We ought to get
50%
it in
into the
and-
debt
and
service schedule.
Properly size it in debt service, that's correct, yeah.
Even when something is grant funded though, don't we capitalize it?
Yes,
And then where does that depreciation expense end up?
In depreciation.
Yeah,
but
it's a
Against the
non-cash
rates or
expense.
no.
A separate category of depreciation that is not included in the rate calculation?
I don't think that depreciation is included in the rate calculation.
It's not a cash expense.
The rates are more cash focused.
Like debt service and
Okay.
principal, interest, that kind of thing. So I don't believe it's used at all.
Right.
It was historically.
Got it,
That was the kind of divergence.
yes.
Thank you.
So, can I make a few
Yes.
comments? We were invited to the meeting with consumers to talk about this a few weeks ago as they were finalizing it, and the townships, was that last December? They put up their capital improvement plans to the city? Last
Yes.
December?
By the end of
December
23, yeah.
before. So the townships put together a capital improvement plan, and there was two parts of that. One of them was, mostly it was recognizing system improvements, looping some dead-end lines, getting some water main in areas that sort of made sense to get it. And then you had the neighborhoods we sort of set aside as a separate, because it's not really a system improvement. So what we're seeing in here is that there's quite a few system improvements. So I'll just go through a few of them. In Comstock, there's a system improvement to help flow out on N Avenue. Because N Avenue and 26th Street, just east of 26th, N Avenue and 26th Street, just east of Sprinkle Road, industrial area. And we've, once a year get a call from somebody who has high water use. So looking forward and getting higher water use or water supply in that area. Comstock, we're looking at doing the backbone required for the Shields plat. We've talked about that. It's an area that really needs water someday. It's a neighborhood. But we can't do that. It's in an area with 3 pressure districts. So there's some homework that needs to be done before that can happen. So that was recognized. Texas Township doesn't have the Texas Drive, closing a loop out there. Oshtemo, there's not any big ones, but there's Atlantic Avenue participating in that. There's a potential road the township's working on, Bluffton Loop. Again, a bunch of smaller loop things, 7th Street. Is this a water main that's happening out here, or is that
Sam's
sewer?
area.
Because
The
there's,
water happened on the north side.
the water's on the north side, 7th Street loops. So anyway, so in terms of what we've seen from the townships providing input to the city for capital improvement, that we're seeing that in here. And everything I'm seeing is really appropriate in terms of the needs that the townships have for service. Atlantic Avenue is an example. N Avenue is an example. So I'm in full support of this. There's nothing in here that seems like it's out of place. Another one's 131 and KL Avenue. There's some work that needs to be done there for the new bridge, so. Looks good to me.
Thank you. I received a little bit of input and also feedback that there was sincere appreciation for the coordination meeting that happened with consumers. There was a request that going forward, there be also review to coordinate with non-motorized projects because water is impacted the locations of those, so the coordination was great and perhaps there could be even additional coordination, which takes time to kind of evaluate. And the example I heard was on KL, the township worked with the city on location of supports for a colonial manor for the non-motorized structure that needs to go in there at the low area. And that coordination is really beneficial to everybody in the big picture because it considers both of those things.
Yes, certainly.
And the other question has to do with the fire hydrants program and noted that there's the annual $150,000, I believe it is.
Yeah.
And whether that is a fund that's available if there's an issue, some, fire hydrant gets hit, or whether or not there is also use of the funds to actively manage a program that's working on things that aren't as emergency, I guess.
Yeah, so all the hydrant maintenance, including just a replacement hydrant, is part of the O&M budget, so different budget. The 150 here is brand new asset hydrants that go in to the system. But everything you said is, on point of what we're focused on and what we're working on. If there is a need for a hydrant somewhere, we'll honor all those requests from township fire chiefs or township fire marshals. So if any township fire chief or fire marshal has any concern with hydrants or would like to have a hydrant added, we'd be happy to do that. Adding hydrants is something that's part of the system. There was, when the system was built, the AWWA requirements that were followed at the time have now been updated. So you'll see that, like out in Richland Township, for example, we've got a lot of new water main and you see a lot of hydrants. And so the hydrant spacing has been updated today. And when we compare that to main that was installed in the 80s or 90s or 70s, you don't have that hydrant spacing. So if there is a need somewhere for hydrants or a fire chief or fire marshal would like to see a hydrant, we're happy to accommodate those.
Thank you. I forgot to mention that along with the non-motorized coordination, there was statement that they hadn't, I guess, closely looked at the coordination with some of the road commission projects and some requests that maybe part of that discussion can have some effect on the overhead charges that are seen from the road commission on some of the utility projects. That those can be excessive, it seems. So perhaps this discussion or this work, this coordination can work toward a better solution on that. And for the pass-throughs, things that are.
Yeah, I know there is some challenge, with that, that's, part of the MDOT Act 51, there's an admin overhead, whether we coordinate with, these projects are a lot of times LEP projects, so when we coordinate with the road commission or when we coordinate with MDOT, we're essentially asking the road commission to administer the project for us. Because we can't have two independent projects happening in the same space, so that's pretty typical with MDOT as well as the road commission.
I'm keenly aware of that issue.
Yeah.
Big bucks.
Yeah.
Any other comments, or is there a?
I would make a motion to approve the 5-year capital improvement program, or we approve it, or do we provide it to the city, or how do we approach that? I can't recall.
Recommend approval?
Recommend approval? Yeah. I would recommend approval of the capital improvement program as provided by Mr. Baker.
Support.
There's a motion by Peter Hafner and second by Jeff Chamberlain to recommend the approval of the fiscal year 2025 5-year water CIP. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Neighborhood policy, Carriage Estates, just a quick summary on that. We had discussion in July, somewhat in-depth with information from Tom Wheat and evaluating the Carriage Estates project in Comstock along with the neighborhood policy, expansion policy, how that's working, how that would work out. And we had reached consensus to take the question of how that's working back to the regional commission to get input on mandatory connections. And so we did that and we have some input on that, but we're not, we don't have sufficient input at this point. The township members who are impacted want to take the question of mandatory connections back to their individual boards because it is an individual board decision. So they are in the process of doing that, and so this will come back to the UPC when we have that feedback. I will add just one thing. I heard a request to clarify that the policy would allow for the local units of government to guarantee, if you will, or fund that 30%. We have the 70-30 versus having the mandatory connections. And I think I've heard that in discussions here that they're just we're looking for some kind of reasonable means of knowing there would be some revenue, but it could be a different way than the mandatory connections. And so I don't think the policy clarifies that at this point, so when it comes back, we can work on that as well. Any other comments or on that? Okay, capital improvement plan.
We did that.
Yeah, we did that. Unless there's anything else on projects, should be shared. I think. Good. Utility financial policy. Steve, sure.
Yeah, so just a minor update that we're requesting. The city's been working with our bond council to work through arbitrage calculations and such. And the initial thought was to be able to fund the bond reserve fund with rate revenue so that we could avoid arbitrage. However, due to the way that it's required by revenue bonds, no matter how we fund it, it's still rate restricted in the revenue fund, or in the bond reserve fund. So we wanted to come back, just give ourselves that flexibility to either fund with rates or with bond proceeds going forward. And that's really all this is asking for. I highlighted in red really the one little change there.
Steve reached out to me, and he said, hey, talking with the bond council, we can't actually invest these dollars and earn more than we're paying on the bonds. And we had discussed at the last meeting where that could be an opportunity to earn more money and have lower rates. And so when it was determined that there was really no benefit to doing it with rate dollars, the thought was, you've already done it with bond proceeds, that should be an option. And I just wanted it to come back to this group so that you just were aware that that wasn't an option for us. I think there's 3 words or 2 words added to the policy. So I would make a motion that we recommend for approval to the city council the updated utility financial policy for water.
Thank you. There's a motion by Peter Hafner and a second by Tom Wheat to approve the utility financial policy amendments as presented. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. professional services invoices on item 7A. I don't think there were any in our.
Yeah, fine, no.
Okay.
Okay, I move approval. Everyone's waiting for me.
I would
Okay.
second.
There's a motion by David Anderson and a second by Peter Hafner to approve the invoice from Bryan and Newhoff as presented. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Abstain.
Motion carries with 6 ayes and 1 abstention. Motion carries. Committee member, alternate attendee, and guest comments. And beginning of the meeting, as we had introductions, I didn't mention at one point, there were 17 people attending, or it said there were 17 attending remotely. A couple of those are the IT system, but, is there anyone present virtually wishing to make a comment? Hearing none, start with audience. Any comments this morning?
No, I have none, just other good meeting and good discussion, thank you.
I have a few. Part of it, first thing is just kind of popped in my mind when we're talking about hydrants. I had the opportunity to go in the field when they were doing hydrant flushings, which I greatly appreciated when I was working for Oshtemo. And my thought was maybe invite, especially the townships, some of the fire people to come out with you. I think the dialogue between the maintenance people and the fire people, just the experience of how to properly handle them is something that would be very appropriate. And I don't know if you have a field book for like the lucidity, if they could even maybe update that, put in the information as your workers are actually in the field. So think about that. I think that'd be mutually beneficial to everyone. And then also I'd like to just compliment, I've been hearing good things about the efforts to coordinate with all the utilities and all the authorities. That continues to be a challenge for everyone, and looking forward to continue to improve that process. And I think everyone needs to be sensitive to the lead times that some of the agencies may need to collect survey data and do some preliminary designs and then dialogue with the designs to be mutually beneficial for all purposes of the public right of way. It's very challenging, and as I say, it's been a lot of progress, and everyone I'm sure is looking forward to continuing that. And then I'm glad to hear the townships are looking at the potential requirement for mandatory connections for areas where public water exists and the well fails. I think that is an appropriate thing regardless because of the importance of getting people on a managed water supply that we have confidence in because of the testing requirements, which is not available with private wells. And then, if I understand what's been discussed by the city with other members of this and the technical, if that alone will allow the need or eliminate the need to separately fund or pass a petition at the local level to fund the extensions in non-critical areas, that is such an advantage to the townships. I wish to encourage them all to consider that mandatory connection because that is so such an advantage. So I certainly wish that to be seriously considered by the townships to approve the mandatory connections. I think that's very important. And now I'm not speaking to the proper choir here. It's the townships that need to hear that, but that's critically important. So thank you.
Ditto.
Okay.
I have nothing, thank you.
Good morning, I have nothing.
So just a couple of comments for observation on the renewable energy program. It's, and one of the comments on the sheet handed out today, there was, somebody described it as a capital call. And that's how I kind of see it. Consumers Energy is embarking on an enormous transition to develop renewable energy. Partly they planned for it in their IRPs, and partly it was kind of codified almost in the legislation last fall that they have to be 100% clean by 2040. So anyway, they have a commitment to develop this renewable energy and requires a lot of capital. So to seek out people, partners, like cities and governments and so forth, seems like a good thing. It helps them finance all this. So your subscription that you sign up for will probably be used by them to obtain financing from banks or bonds or something to finance the project. But you're locked in as far as your cost, and revenues depend on selling the electricity to the grid on the open market, which seems pretty safe because electricity seems like it's going up every year. But Mr. Heffler mentioned that he checked the open market, and I'm not sure what market that was, if that was a MISO market or whatever. It was 2 cents per kilowatt hour, and you're kind of assuming that it's going to be sold for more than 6.4 cents per kilowatt hour or something like that. So in that case, it could be, there's an example where it could be a little bit risky. But overall, I mean, I support the program. The risk is, I guess it's whatever you decide the risk is. But it's needed, it's necessary. I'm glad that a lot of people are participating in it. But it's not a loan to the utilities. It's not an investment. You can't sell it or anything. You have no control over it. So it's really a subscription to a profit-making type of endeavor. So these renewables will be sold. Hopefully will bring enough revenue in. There was no mention of termination fees or anything like that. So without reading the contract language, you know all the details. But suppose that people have looked at that already. And I just want to compliment everyone on taking a little bit of risk to help out with this, help consumers reduce their pollution, because the city is really not polluting anything. They have to buy service or product from another supplier that is doing the pollution. So the city is helping them clean up their energy sources for their electricity. That's all.
Thank you. Any comment?
A very insightful meeting, and thank you to everybody.
So I want to say thanks for having me, and if there's ever a time consumers can be here, talk about projects or coordination or anything like that we've got going on, we're happy to be here. Just let me know.
Thank you, Derek.
Charleston was going to adopt this wellhead protection ordinance. We work with our attorney, and we'll be putting our wells under well protection. The rates are important. I hope that they move along. We adopt it better than you do.
And we use your water rates as a tool for what we do in our, but then the sewer, we had a huge increase last year, major increase. And if it's gonna be another one, I need to help sell that. And so as soon as we can get the information. And James, you talked about solar fields and said, has wind ever been in discussion on renewable?
Yeah, I would say Derek's probably the expert on that. That renewable would include wind and solar kind of together. For the analysis that we presented to compare, where we could put some of these things, we didn't really make any wind comparisons. The team for the city that was kind of analyzing things has some experience with solar, but our team doesn't have any wind experience, so we couldn't really make any wind examples. We just didn't have the team together to be able to do that. But it is understood that renewable would include wind and solar together.
Yeah, I would say probably of what's gonna be built out over the next 20 years, I'd say probably 3/4 of it will be solar, and there'll be some wind in there as well. There's just less areas around the state that are
I
as
know
good
that
for
some
wind.
areas got a lot
Yeah.
of, I don't know about South Haven, coming off the lake.
Thank you. And then member comments?
No comment?
I'm good.
I would just like to point out, because we work with Pavilion Township, and we actually, the UPC approved for the oversizing of some water main that came off of Van Avenue and loops around to pick up Abbey Farms, which is a 1,100 unit apartment complex, and the city put in the water. But the development lagged a little bit, so the water there got a little stale. There's been some complaints in terms of some odors and taste issues based on the age. And I just want to compliment the city water department because they've gone above and beyond to address that situation. When the complaint started rolling in, they've changed the operations of 2 tanks, shut some valves to encourage water to go through there, have done some flushing on the flushers, installing a permanent auto flusher. And then just last week, they did ice pigging to try to scour, because what happens if you don't get a lot of water use through there, and tell me if I'm talking about, you get a biofilm. If you don't get enough water going through there with enough chlorine, you can get a biofilm. And they did this ice pigging last week where you put slush basically down there and you run it through and it scours that film off the inside of the pipe without damaging the pipe. So just one thing after another, they've been trying to address the issue. And I think they're seeing success.
Yeah.
So from the township standpoint, we're very pleased with it. So thank you for all that work.
Yeah, no, thank you. I mean, it's a testament to our team. Water quality is extremely important for us, as we talked about. The stats and KPIs that we keep, water quality complaints is something that we report on. We report not only to this board, but we also report to Eagle for every water quality complaint. And so we want to make sure we have addressed the water quality complaint and that we follow through with a solution. We continue to work positively with Abbey Farms. Some of our last steps are water heater flushing, so we actually contacted a water heater manufacturer, talked directly with the engineers at the manufacturer of the water heaters themselves, and so there's a whole pretty involved process of those water heaters to flush them, chlorinate them, and then return them to service. Once that stagnant water kind of makes its way through the system, it can really live inside that water heater because water heaters don't get turned around, and so once that stagnation occurred, and we've now solved that, but once that had occurred, it kind of created that problem. And until we go in there and follow the manufacturer's recommendations for flushing and chlorinating, involves using a licensed plumber. Once we've done that, we've completely eliminated those concerns. So we're on the right track. We've had very positive results, and we're gonna see it through until, that issue is totally mitigated.
Thank you.
Nothing.
I just want to thank Charleston on the wellhead ordinance they're working on because the members of signatories on the contract that were required to do that have done it, and this is a voluntary effort, so that's great. The proposed consumers energy contract with the city of Kalamazoo is in the UPC packet that's online for August, so if you wanted to look at that contract, the member mention was made. And then I just want to close with, I appreciate the constructive dialogue we're having on a number of points, so.
Adjourn. Samantha Craig has had her hand raised the whole meeting.
Oh. Okay. Okay,
You wanna have her talk?
is that during public comment?
She's had it, when
Okay.
you guys were talking about electricity, she had her hand raised, and she's raised it several times.
Oh, okay, I didn't,
So if you want me to unmute her so she can talk, I can.
yes.
Okay. She's unmuted.
Hello.
Hello?
Hi. I just want, I fully support the renewable energy, very, completely support of it as a local farmer and renewable energy advocate. I just wanted to know if there was anything in the proposed agreement with consumers or, in what you guys are looking for them to try to site facilities and close in the area, in Kalamazoo County, in the, in this kind of general vicinity of Kalamazoo.
There's nothing in the, just briefly, there's nothing that we've discussed, but your point is heard and perhaps would be discussed at the city when it goes
And
further.
I guess the just other half of the comment would be just asking if you guys if you guys engaged in any kind of competitive process looking for bids on renewable energy solutions for the city.
I guess, I mean, with Michigan being a regulated state, I mean, there's not really, we're the provider for the city, right? But it also, the door is open, certainly, some of those other sites or opportunities that were talked about in terms of like smaller community type solar. I mean, the door certainly is open for that in the future. That was something that we discussed at the last meeting. That doesn't preclude the city from, engaging in community solar or other type projects like that, so.
Thank you. Okay, we have, our next meeting date is October 10th, and we've exhausted the agenda and we are adjourned. Thank you.
Libby, do you want to get that letter, if you can get a copy of that audit letter?
Yes, I emailed Linda, let me see if she's.
Yep. How you been, buddy?
I'm here.